Questions today. Maybe a few questions if you have them about St. Michael, all angels, the readings today. Patricia gave me the spray. I'm supposed to spray. Help me. I don't know. I couldn't tell, but just wait. It's isn't it interesting? It's now an alcohol. Maybe that's part of the problem. Okay, now questions. Yeah, Marcia, please. Oh my, Marcia. Yes, you should. I just forgot. Who here, by way of confession, knew that the angel was supposed to be out and didn't say anything? Marcia's the only one who's willing. And you. I know that's right. What was it the time? That time we were singing that hymn. Remember the hymn? It made it past everyone, including me, and it was the Sunday after Easter, and I had written down hymn 456, and it should have been hymn 465, and so it was. Dun, 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 dun. That hymn, it's this Easter. Dun, 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 dun. But instead, hymn 456 started playing. And I said, our opening hymn is hymn 456. It's the Sunday after Easter. Yeah. And hymn 456 is, were you there when they crucified? Which I can't stand that hymn anyway. Sorry, that's if you're going to have that at your funeral, I apologize, but so I don't like that hymn, and that's a terrible hymn anyway. So you remember I had to stop in the middle, and Rachel was playing organ, and I said, Rachel, I'm pretty sure I missed the digits around, and it's hymn 465. Do you think you could just turn and play the hymn 465, which is the most difficult, or one of the most difficult hymns in the whole hymnal to play. And she played it, boom, just like that. I didn't even get her a chance to get nervous. But afterwards, everybody said, yeah, I know, it was so weird. I knew I saw that, but I just thought you meant to do it. No, I didn't mean to sing. Were you there? Rachel and Tyler probably left. And also, I'd like to have the angels out, so just remember that for next year.
Well, I had plenty of time.
You're digging yourself deeper, Marcia. Okay, other questions? Thomas.
You said that an angel or a demon can possess an entire nation. Would this be presume that they aren't a Christian nation, or that they don't have Christians involved in that?
That's a really fascinating question. Thomas's question is that I said or I suggested today that a demon can occupy or control an entire nation, and I got that from, and I know I'm on thin ice on this, so you be the judge on if you think this is warranted from the text. But in Daniel chapter 10, Jesus says, I was contending with the prince of Persia for 21 days. I think it says about that, roughly. And he clearly is contending with a demon at that point. That's what he's that's the realm he's talking about. And so I deduce from that a demon can control a nation in a sense. He's a prince of Persia. He wasn't contending with the king of Persia or something. He was contending with a demon. And so Thomas's question is, if that's the case, then would that presume that the nation in question is not a Christian nation, or that it does not have Christians in the nation such that it could be possessed? No, I don't think so. I'm not sure. I'm not sure, Thomas, what it exactly means to call a nation a Christian nation. I think I know what that means when people use it, but it's a little squishy. Because a Christian is a person who believes in Jesus. That's the definition of a Christian. Well, so can a nation believe in Jesus? No. A nation can be comprised primarily of Christians, and I guess you could then call it a Christian nation because many people in the nation are Christian. But to me, it's a poor category. It's like calling a tree a Christian tree. Trees can't believe in Jesus. Nations can't believe. Only people can believe in Jesus. So I don't know what it means to call that. Maybe as Christian principles, but even that is like, what do you mean Christian? Because based on the Ten Commandments, I think it's a category. It's a dangerous category. So no, I don't think so. I think a nation, even one comprised largely of Christians. There were Christians in Persia, even though there were only a few. Could potentially be under the control of the demons, and I don't have any doubt that things going on in America today are the result of demonic attack. I don't know if I would say they're possessed. I'm telling you, this is strange. That Daniel, that statement in Daniel is strange. So I don't know what more to make of it than that. Yeah, Micah.
I have two really quick things and then a little bit longer one if you'll allow me.
That's 1, 2, 3. 3 things. Okay.
In your sermon, you didn't list the fifth commandment, but that probably would have been, if you had chosen to, would have been appropriate with the drug use. Like, correct? What do you think?
Well, with the guy, oh yeah, when he said, and I said, wait about the fourth or the, yeah, I just skipped it. Fifth commandment would be drug use.
In the Old Testament reading, verse 2, and many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, and then some to life, some to everlasting contempt. The many of those, we should just read that as all?
I think so, yeah. I think when we studied Daniel, we decided that the many of those, he's talking about the resurrection on the last day. We know all people will be raised on that day. But read it again for me. So I don't have my bulletin.
And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt.
Okay. Many of those who sleep in the dust. Yeah, I think we're just taking that as all. I can't remember any further nuance or expansion on that from studying it. Now, a longer one, you said.
Potentially, depends on up to you. But in the gospel, verse 8, if your hand or foot causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you, etc. I think it was maybe like Origen in the early church had mutilated his body, and it was like pretty soon decided, like kind of writ large by the church, of when Jesus says that, yes, he like means what he says, but we don't actually think you should gouge out your eye or cut off your hand. And I know I've heard you speak to it at least at some point, but when you extrapolate on that a little bit, like maybe the church's understanding of like what is the practical application of that verse? What is Jesus actually doing?
When Jesus says, if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. Better to go into life with one hand than it go into eternal damnation with two hands. Same with your eye. I think that's right. The church's position on that, if the way you reflected it would be my position basically, and that those verses indicate that we should take very seriously our what I would call mortification of the flesh, meaning our discipline over our body, to be deliberate and conscientious about fighting against sin and doing everything we can in a very serious way to remove it because of its danger. You know that you can cut your hand. Okay, so if your eye causes you to sin, you can gouge out your eye. But the eye is only the part. That's not the main. Your eyes are not your main problem, is it? Your main problem. My main problem is my heart, and I can gouge out my eyes, but I can't gouge out and stay alive my heart, or my soul, or my sinful flesh. So this is the Lord's way of saying it's serious. It's a serious business.
And the practical application would just be very subjective.
Yeah.
Per person.
Yeah.
But is it fair to like, you shouldn't be like, oh, well that, people would think that's weird. Like, oh, if I'm willing to go to movies because they always end up tempting me in some way or the other. Like, it should almost never be too extreme.
Yeah, so I think that it would indicate, wouldn't it, that some kind of external discipline will be useful and probably necessary. So that if I am hooked into some kind of habit or sin, that some external, maybe even extreme kind of discipline to remove that sin would be there called for. That could get you ridiculed.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions, I think. Rolf.
You said that the demons tempt us. Do all sins we commit arise from this temptation of the demons, or is there this internal corruption of our flesh that brings forth these sins as well?
I don't know. I think I can say I don't know. Rolf's question, if you didn't hear him, is the demons tempt us to sin. Is every time I sin the result of demonic temptation, or is it sometimes that my sin simply arises from my own flesh? All my sin arises from my own flesh. So that's the only 100% I can say. I don't think I know of anything in the Bible which indicates that the devil's behind every sin I commit. Unless you can think of something. I just don't think I'd be able to conclude that. James.
Martin Luther thought that Michael was Jesus. What do you think of that?
I disagree. I think Luther, did he say that one? James's question is that Martin Luther thought that Michael was Jesus. And I do remember the arguments, James. I can't remember very well what they were. Do you remember the argument for why he thought that? Off the top of your head, I'm putting you on the spot.
I think it's because Jesus has authority, as God has authority over the angels, and that's why he defeated Satan and not an angel, that he specifically was the one to cast Satan out, because he has authority over all the spirits.
Because Jesus alone has the authority to cast the devil out of... I'm sorry, I'm repeating what you're saying, because the Lord Jesus alone has authority to cast the demons out of heaven. Therefore, it had to have been Jesus who did it. I understand that argument. I just don't think it's a very strong argument, and I don't think Luther would either. Clearly, Jesus is the only one who has authority to do these things, but he uses his mechanisms all the time. He uses his means, as he does in our world, in this angelic world. We can say Jesus expelled them from heaven at the same time as saying that the angels expelled them from heaven. And in fact, we know the angels did. So I think there's more to it, though. I think you're missing part of that argument. I just can't remember what it was. But I think so I thought my conclusion was pretty flimsy. David.
You said, or maybe maybe I heard you wrong, but you said that in the new heavens and new earth, we'll be at least partially able to see into that invisible realm.
Yeah.
Where are you getting that from?
Because we know that on the last day the angels will come. I think we've got pretty good indication that we're going to see the angels when they come. They'll be on his right and left. I think we can conclude that. So when he comes when Jesus, who's presently in the invisible realm by his own authority, will become visible. Then also the angels will become visible.
Do you think that's just on Judgment Day itself, or permanent afterwards?
Let's see. I don't know. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that indicates that that in the new heavens and the new earth we'll perpetually be able to see things that we hadn't been able to in this life. I'm racking my brain to try to think if I can think of something like that. Can any of you think of a passage or something where it would indicate that when we're in heaven, clearly the angels will be there, but will we be able to see them in heaven? Now, I'm just limiting myself to that question. Do you have it, Andrew? Do you have an idea on that?
There's that part where the martyrs in heaven before the second coming interact with
Right.
Jesus in a spiritual way, and there's a sort of sight I think I can glean from
At
that
least a
passage,
hearing.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, that one's tougher. I thought of that, but I don't think I can get much from it. James?
There's the angels appearing in physical form to Abraham and then going to Sodom to Lot. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but they could be able to do that.
They can do it. Yeah. Yeah, but will we live in heaven in the perpetual kind of visible presence of angels? I just can't actually remember. I think we assume that. Maybe it's just a worldview assumption that I have, and it's not tested by the Bible the way it needs to. But I think on Judgment Day, since they're visible.
And all the visions that people, that are written down that people have of heaven, you always hear about the angels, but obviously they're given special sight to
Yeah.
see those visions in the first place.
It's a unique capacity granted for temporary time. And when we go to the new heavens and the new earth, remember, that won't be so otherworldly than it is here. We're not going to be in clouds and a weirdness. It's just going to be a new earth, but without sin. Okay, well, we better move. We don't have a ton of, we got going late today. Proverbs chapter 12. For those of you who haven't been here or aren't here very often, we study a proverb every week, or try to. We're in chapter 12 right now, and today's proverb is verse number 13, verse 13. 12:13. Because the Proverbs give us wisdom for Christian life, practical kind of wisdom. Solomon being the wisest man who ever lived aside from the Lord, but it's too rich. We can't take a whole class worth of it, so just a few minutes. Chapter 12, verse 13. An evil man is ensnared by the transgression of his lips, but the righteous escapes from trouble. What'd you pull up there? Do you have it wasn't. Just keeping you hopping. I don't know that it's offense, but here's what I would let me just point on the screen here. See if you can see it. Here, an evil person, again, that's an unbeliever, just always called, and then the righteous is always a Christian, so righteous is imputed righteousness, and they're and righteous in their life as a result of that. So a life characterized by a Christian or by an unbelieving person will be ensnared by the offense of his lips. Characterized by a Christian, he'll escape from trouble. Where I think the nice connection here is these two words, ensnared and escape. I do appreciate the translation of escape in the NAS. ESV uses the same thing. King James doesn't. It's a little bit more literal in this way. I think it says comes out of trouble or something like that. I like escape, and in fact, probably they're getting that from the Septuagint, which does use the word ekfugo, which means escape. But it's totally legitimate as a translation for the Hebrew also. So I'm going to stick with escape. And the reason is I think it sheds light, that little connection. So here you have a person who says something and ends up getting what? Ensnared, trapped in something. There's a trap that's going on. So he's told some sort of thing. He said something. I think he's telling lies. I think he's telling a lie with his lips. And the result of that is eventually his lies begin to what? Entrap him. Whereas a person here in the next line presumably tells the truth and then eventually escapes from trouble because of his telling of the truth. So what I think probably is the application. Telling lies, when I decide I want to tell a lie or a white lie or a half-truth or something, it's because it's easier to tell the lie than to tell the truth. And so I deliver myself over to the easy course. When I want to tell the truth, it's oftentimes more difficult to tell the truth. It's uncomfortable. I'm going to disappoint somebody or I'm going to make everybody uncomfortable because I have to tell the truth. It's harder. But it's deceptive because when I tell a lie, it's easy up front, but what ends up happening? You've got to cover for yourself. You're aware of this. Lies, people that lie end up having to what? Cover for themselves. They have to remember the narrative. They have to remember the story that they were lying about, what they were saying. And then they got to remember, who did I tell that lie to? Did I have to? And it can be very subtle, but it's complex. And it ends up being an entrapment. It's a snare and misery. Whereas when I tell the truth, it's oftentimes uncomfortable, but it ends up working out for me. It's better in the end. I come out of my trouble. I escape from trouble. Can you see how the one easy up front, hard in the end. The other one, hard up front, easy in the end. Solomon says, pick the second one. I was thinking about this. You know how when you're running late and you got to call somebody and say, it's embarrassing because I forgot. I'm running a few minutes late. I'm going to be a little late. It's a very minor thing, but there's something going on there. I say to him, I think I'm going to be 5 minutes late. I'm sorry. Probably just a few minutes. But actually, I'm not even being honest about that. Because my thing says I'm going to be getting there 6 minutes late. And I still have to find parking, and I'm not actually sure where the room is. There's a really good chance I'm going to be 15 minutes late. But I just don't want to bring myself to say, it's one thing to say I'm going to be a few minutes late. It's not a big deal. Just hang on. And another thing to say, I'm going to be 15 or 20 minutes late. Ugh, that's embarrassing. I know they're judging me when I say I'm going to have to be 15 or 20. I don't want to tell the truth. So I say I'm going to be a few minutes late, and then I end up what? Then they're disappointed because I'm not actually a few minutes late. I'm even more than that. I'm 15. Whereas you should just, if you're going to call people, I know this seems very basic, but this is, I think, illustrates the point. If you're going to call people and tell them you got to be late, just tell them up front. Bite the bullet and say, all right, I blew it. I'm sorry. I'm going to be 15 or 20 minutes late. Even though my thing says it's 6 minutes. I'm only going to be 5 or 6 minutes. And then you're not worried the whole time. When I'm driving, if I told them I'm a few minutes late, I'm worried the whole time. I'm maybe going too fast. I'm running. I'm stressed. I get there. And so it's a tiny example. But why? That's the question I'm asking. Why do you tell people you're only going to be a few minutes late when you know it's going to be more? Really, you know it's going to be more? Because you don't want to be embarrassed. But you're going to be embarrassed anyway, so might as well just tell the truth. Solomon is super invested in teaching his students to tell the truth. Okay. Maybe real quick, while you're turning to Job chapter, 9. Job 9.
Do you think that's primarily lying, or would you say, it's totally the eighth commandment? Also,
I was thinking lying. It could be all eighth commandment, so that we do not tell lies about our neighbor, betray him. Was it tell lies about our neighbor? Betray him, slander him, or hurt his reputation. So all of those would be. I think you could fit that into the same mold. That those are all just kind of easy up front, simple, and they're going to cause trouble in the end. But defending your neighbor from slander, which is what we're supposed to do, is not always very fun. But it's going to be worth it in the end. Job chapter 9, I think. Again, I'm going to refer you to my summary of Job, which you can track along with. Very, very cursory summary. If you don't have it, I'm apologizing. I didn't print out any more. Is there any, for people that might not have them, that remain from the month ago that I printed them out? Back on the back table. There's 4. So there's not enough to give them away free. Those are going to have to be for a charge at this point. Be $5 for a copy. That'll be $5. Anybody else? Okay, now they're going for free. Anybody for free? Nobody. Got them. Everybody must have one. chapter 9. Now, we did 9, I think, last time, Marcia, is that right?
Well, I circled 10, but I thought you.
Yeah, you might be right. We might have gotten through 9. That's why I was asking.
I think we finished on verse 32.
Did we? Oh, nice, good. Okay. This is Job. So just to make a quick review, Job is working to understand, and if you've been here, this is a repeat, multiple repeat. But Job is justified before God's face. He knows that. He's a Christian. He has a Redeemer, a mediator. He trusts him. Job knows he's a sinner. Job is like you and I. He's a repentant sinner who trusts in the justification of God for the sake of his Redeemer. The trouble that Job is working against is that God is by his mouth, by his word, is declaring him to be righteous, but he is not treating him like he's righteous. He's treating him like he's a worm and a sinner, like he's got something to punish him for or an axe to grind. So Job is working with the tension between what God has said and the way God is acting. And it doesn't make sense. He can't fit them together. His friends come to him and say, God is consistent. Job, you're right. God should be consistent, and he is consistent. He's treating you in a certain way, and that is because you are not righteous in his sight. You are a sinner in his sight, and therefore he's punishing you. And you, therefore, will need to obligate yourself to fix your problem and get rid of your own sins, turn your life around, and then things will be better for you. And that's our advice to you. We're coming to counsel you, and the way we're counseling in you is you are not a righteous man before God. It's horrible. They're preaching false doctrine to him. God says you're righteous. His friends come and say, no, that's false. And so that's terror. That's ugh. Anyway. Here we have another piece of evidence in verse number 33. So I'm on chapter 9, verse 33, and I'm just diving right in. If you haven't been with us, hang on. Chapter 9, verse 33 says, or 32, for he is not a man as I am, that I might answer him, that we should come to trial together. He's talking about God, and he's saying, look, I wish I could talk to him. I wish I could talk to God, and I could ask him. You know, we could sit down across a table, and I could say, can you make sense of this? I want an explanation. But he doesn't. I can't just call him in. I can't get him to sit down at a table and talk to me. He's not a man like I am. And then he says, now my translation says, there is no arbiter between us. But I like the NIV translation, and it's a legitimate translation, actually, yes, the NIV, that says, if only an arbiter, if only there were an arbiter between us. And the word arbiter is the same word as what we're more familiar with the word what? Mediator, same thing, arbiter, mediator. But mediator, we recognize who he's talking about here. If only my mediator were here or something, that he might lay his hand on us both. If only my mediator could come and make some explanation of this. And I think here he's referring to his Redeemer, his Goel, which is an indication, isn't it? I think a beautiful indication that Job, even though I don't understand all the clarity of his language, it's tough to translate still. Job is aware that there is a being which bridges the gap between he and his sin and God and his holiness, and that is his mediator. And he said, what happened to my mediator? I trust my mediator. Where is he? Does it not even matter? And that's Job's difficulty. It's like I'm not even righteous. Like he's redeemed me. He's mediated between me and God, my sins. But where is he now? That I'm having all this trouble, and it doesn't even matter. It feels like. The Septuagint translates this: would that he, our mediator, were present, one who should hear the cause between both. So the Greek translation agrees with the NIV, actually. Okay, that's chapter 9. Finish that up. Let's move on to chapter 10. Now, chapter 10, according to my silly summary, it continues to be Job speaking, but it switches here. Job is not responding directly any longer to Bildad. Bildad's number 2 in the lineup. Eliphaz, Bildad, Zophar were responding to Bildad here. In chapter 10, Job now begins to speak directly to God, and I get that from, if you're at chapter 10, from verse number 2. I will say to God. So, chapter 10, let me just start reading and pick up a few maybe notes as we go. Chapter 10, verse 1. I loathe my life. I will give free utterance to my complaint. I will speak in the bitterness of my soul. I will say to God, that's why I think this is a prayer to God. That's not talking to Bildad anymore. It's the same outline as Eliphaz. A chapter in response to Eliphaz and a chapter of prayer to God. I will say to God, do not condemn me. Let me know why you contend against me. Now, probably that's at the heart of Job's difficulty, and it's this phrase. Let me know why. Now, you might have prayed something like that before to the Lord. Oh Lord, how long? Oh Lord, let me know why. And so that Job wants an explanation. He wants an explanation. I suggest to you even more than he wants an alleviation of the difficulty. The actual height of his difficulty is not so much the pain, which I think Job recognizes he's going to go to heaven even though it's really, really bad. What he doesn't, where the devil is tempting him through his friends, is in response to the question, why would God do this to you? And Job is saying, I wish I could ask God why. And God is not giving him an answer. And that's by God's design. Now in verse number 4, again, this is a prayer. So the "have you eyes of flesh" that's not Bildad, that's God. He's praying to God and asking God, have you eyes of flesh? Do you see as a man sees? Are your days as the days of man, or your years as a man's years, that you seek out my iniquity and search for my sin? Although you know that I'm not guilty, although you know that I am not guilty, but there's none to deliver out of your hand. So what he's saying, he's asking a question. You're acting like a man. Are you? Do you have eyes of a flesh? Do you see as a man sees? What's going on? And he's asking God. I take that to be a rhetorical question. Job is saying, do you see my friend, God, you see my friends there? They're pointing their finger at me and saying, Job, you are a sinner. And that's your problem. And God now is responding to God and saying, are you the same way? Or is that what you're doing? Are you like these men, pointing your finger at me and saying, you're a sinner, that's your problem? Is that the way you are? I think he's asking, that's a rhetorical question. He knows he's not. But he's saying, you're treating me like these guys. You're treating me like my friends are. Are you like a man who would seek out my iniquity and search for my sin? Now, again, Job knows that that's not what God is doing. God's in heaven declaring him righteous. But again, he's asking the rhetorical question, why are you treating me like this? Right. Even though you know, Job says to God, you know I'm not guilty. And we've already pointed out any number of times where Job has admitted he's a sinner. And yet he can turn to God and say, God, you know I'm not guilty. Isn't that remarkable? And as we've said, we'll say it again, Job is a sinful man, forgiven of his sins, and confident before God's face. Okay, let's keep going. Verse number 12, I'm skipping. You've granted me life and steadfast love. That word is heseth in the Hebrew. That's the Lord, you have granted me life and mercy or loving kindness, but the word is undeserved favor. It's the closest word maybe to grace, mercy. Job doesn't say, I don't need mercy, I don't need grace, I'm a perfect man. Job says, no, I'm perfect because of the Lord's mercy, because of his declaration. This is a book about grace. It's not a book about good works, how Job is so good, but his reliance on grace. And your care has preserved my spirit. Verse 13. Yet these things you have hid in your heart. So Job is saying, I don't know what you have a reason, I know it. But you're sure not telling me. You've hid your reasons for treating me this way in your heart. I don't know your purposes. And in verse 13 where it says, I know this was your purpose, that is hard to translate, that phrase. I don't think it's accurately translated. I don't know what more to tell you. But I don't think he says, I know that was your purpose. In verse 14, I think he's using the same argument. In other words, Job is saying, you're acting as though you have not forgiven me of all my sins. So verse 14, if I sin, you watch me, and do not acquit me of my iniquity. If I'm guilty, woe to me. If I'm in the right, I cannot lift my head, for I am filled with disgrace and look on my affliction. So he said, do you notice there in verse 15, if I'm guilty, woe to me. But if I'm righteous, if I'm in the right, if I'm righteous, I cannot lift up my head. So whether I'm guilty or whether I'm righteous, it doesn't seem right now to matter. There's no distinction between a guilty person and a righteous person. Apparently, God right now, the way you're acting, can you see Job's complaint that he's bringing to God? That's what I'm trying to push. Is it admitting that it's challenging? Is it? What questions do you have, or is it? Yeah, Keegan.
Is disgrace the right word there? In 15. The King James says, "I am full of confusion. Therefore, see thou mine affliction." In the ESV, it says, "And look on my affliction." It seems like Job is looking on his own affliction, as opposed to the KJV. It seems like I'm confused, but you can see what's happening.
I can't remember the word in the Hebrew, or for that matter, the Greek. The word disgrace, I would have translated as shame, probably. I'm filled with shame and look on my affliction. But I don't know what the major distinction is. You said, what does the King James say?
I'm full of confusion. Which is also like how you describe it.
I'm going to have to look at the Hebrew more closely. But confusion is interesting, isn't it? Okay.
In 13, you said you didn't really know what the correct translation was. Do you think that it would be more along the lines of like, you hid these reasons in your heart, and instead of, I know that this was your purpose, was that supposed to mean like, I know that you have a purpose?
And I know this was in your mind. No, I don't think it's the reason I just dismissed the whole half of that verse is because I think the translation is very unwieldy. It's got a number of wildly different possibilities. And so it's not just a matter of tweaking it a little bit, but I can't remember exactly what the possibilities. That's why I was looking at the NIV to see if that would give me some insight. Keegan might have 10 translations, and he could look and see that there's a bunch of different variation at that point with the Hebrew that make it challenging. And when a bunch of different translators come back at you with totally different stuff, then you kind of conclude, oh boy, this is hard. Luther would do that all the time. He'd say, well, we really don't know what this is saying. Okay, I'm going to keep moving. That's chapter 10. As I told you before and warned you, in the past, I've gone verse by verse through different things in the Bible. I don't want to do that with Job. I want to kind of pick at things and keep moving. So I'm going to go to chapter 11. And now the third of the three speeches, or the three men, Zophar, which is going to be the shortest so far of the three, I think. Then Zophar the Naamathite answered and said, now before I begin reading, oh, by the way, my summary of Job at chapter 10, I summarized it this way: seriously, now he's asking God, seriously, do you judge like my buddies? What did I say? Why do you judge like my counselors here? Do you judge like my counselors here according to my sin? Because it sure seems that way. It seems like you're treating me according to my sins. Okay, chapter 11, Zophar responds. Now, I think sometimes the book of Job is helpful because you get in the next speech a quick summary of the previous speech, or a summary of the previous person's main argument. And Zophar gives that to us here, which is helpful. So, verse number 2. Should a multitude of words go unanswered, and a man full of talk be judged right? Should your babble silence men, and when you mock, shall no one shame you? So, summarize Zophar there. He's saying, well, you think we should just listen to this nonsense and not say something? That's what he's saying. Should your babble silence everybody? You're not gonna let you. So now Zophar says, I'll respond to you, Job. Verse 4. For you say, here it is. For you say, my doctrine is pure, and I am clean in God's eyes. That's his summary of Job's position. And that is actually an accurate position, isn't it? It's an accurate summary. Job has all along been saying, I am clean in God's sight, in God's eyes. In God's eyes, I'm clean. And why? Because of the doctrine, because of the teaching. I'm holding to the teaching, which is that I am pure in God's sight. It doesn't mean I think I'm sinless. I'm sinless in God's sight. That's beautiful. I think that's helpful. Zophar continues, verse 5. But oh, that God would speak and open his lips to you, that he would tell you the secrets of wisdom, for he is manifold in his understanding. So again, remember we made fun of Eliphaz, the first guy, because he said, God came to me in the night and gave me a vision. And here's my vision for you. Let me give you this advice. You're sinful, Job. Here, Zophar does something similar. He says, because Zophar is just revealing himself to be a Shwemerai or an enthusiast or a mystic. God is speaking to him directly. And he says, that God would just tell you, like he's told me, the secrets of wisdom. For he is manifold in his understanding, Job, and you're just not getting it all. Know then, and here's his argument. Verse 6, know then that God exacts of you less than your guilt deserves. The NIV translates this, which I also appreciate. God has even forgotten some of your sins. And so Job's argument is, the Lord forgives my sins. I'm righteous. Zophar says, I understand that. It's true. God does forgive sins. He even forgives maybe a lot of sins, but he doesn't forgive them all. That's his argument. God exacts of you less than what you deserve. He's forgiving. I don't want to take away from his forgiveness. Very gracious. But he doesn't forgive them all. You're going to have to do something to supplement his forgiveness, to make up for your sins somehow. And Zophar is going to continue to make this really ham-fisted argument throughout the remainder of this chapter. If you would just, he's going to say basically, where does he make the argument? I know, we're just about the time. Bear with me. Measure because it passes through. Not consider it. What is it? Yeah, verse 14. No, 13. Verse 13. Zophar says, if you would prepare your heart, you'll stretch out your hands toward him. If iniquity is in your hand, put it far away, and let not injustice dwell in your tents. Surely then you'll lift up your face without blemish. You'll be secure and will not fear. You'll forget your misery. You'll remember it as waters that have passed away. That's his argument. Verse 13. If you would get your heart right before God, reach out to him in prayer, stretch out your hands to him in prayer. And where you have iniquity in your hand, put it away from you. And let no injustice dwell in your tents. In your house, put it out of your house. Get your heart and your life right with God. And then what will happen? Then you'll be restored. In verse number, you can come down to me just a little bit. Verse 15, surely then, once you get your heart and life in order, then you'll lift up your face without blemish. Job's busy saying, I'm without blemish before God. I am pure. And Zophar says, get your life right with God, and then you'll be without blemish. You'll be secure, you won't have fear, you'll forget your misery, because your misery will be gone. Waters have passed, and then your life will be brighter. Oh man, Job, things will be so what? Bright. Like in the morning. And you'll be secure again because there's hope. You'll look around and take your rest in security. You won't be afraid anymore. People will come and court your favor. But Job, if you stay in your wickedness, the eyes of the wicked will fail. And all way of escape will be lost to them, and all their hope is a breath, is to breathe their last. That's all you'll have is death as your comfort. But can you see his argument? You sure you're partially forgiven of your sins, but God doesn't forgive all sins. Just some, maybe most. But you're going to have to get your life and your heart right, and then you'll be restored. Okay, pretty rough, isn't it? Just straight up argument against God and his word. And that's what Job is dealing with. Job's going to say in the next chapter something like, oh, you're so smart, Zophar. Boy, your wisdom is real wisdom. And then he says, that's when he says the famous line, you are all worthless physicians to me. Okay. I better break for the day. I see some hands, but the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God, the Father, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all. Amen.